Hey guys, welcome to another edition of Doing Things Dan's Way. And this time what we have is I have my Infiniti G37 here, and the backlight on the screen, on the instrument cluster, actually has some LEDs that have been cutting out on and off over the last couple of years. Right now you can see there's only one LED section that's out. Each one of these areas has two LEDs on it in series, so they're in pairs. And over time, I've had all different kinds of sections of the instrument cluster come and go. The LEDs themselves are failing. What we're going to do today is we're going to completely dismantle this whole cluster. This is a huge project. It's not. I'm going to try and simplify it, but there are a lot of steps, and it will seem really scary at times. But I'll try and show you the most succinct way how to pull this all apart. Okay, so what we're going to do. We're going to take apart this entire bottom section here. All of this is going to come off, including the accessories, trunk release or hood release, all the pieces that are down here. We'll take this off. We're going to take the steering wheel off. We're going to take the airbag out. We're going to take off the top and bottom cowlings here. And when we have all that loose, we will not have to take off the turn signals and wiper. This whole piece will be loose as a module, and we'll be able to pull this whole section out all as one piece. And then from there, we can dismantle it and get the instrument cluster out. And then once we get the cluster out, I'm going to go a step farther of actually replacing the LEDs. You can go online and get a brand new or a remanufactured unit for about $100 on eBay, and they'll program in the miles that you've already run. So that you're not cheating on your miles here. But I'm going to go a step further and actually go all the way down to the circuit board and actually repair the board, at least try to. So that's the plan. Let's get started. Okay, so one of the first steps you have to do, and this is a no matter what kind of thing, whenever you start dealing with stuff like this, is you have to come in and you have to disconnect the negative terminal of the battery. The reason for this is you are going to be working around the airbags. In fact, you're going to be removing one, and you don't want to mess with the airbag system when it's on. And so we're just going to pull this off, which is kind of hard to do left-handed apparently. Get it on there. There we go. And you always do the negative terminal first, because imagine if I'm doing the positive terminal and I touch one side of this tool to ground, then I complete the circuit, right? So feels weird, but you always disconnect the negative terminal and stick it in a place nice and safe where it will not pop up and reconnect itself. That would be really, really bad. Okay, so now we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we are going to remove these little caps that are that cover over the hole that covers the bolts for the airbag is. And there's one more on this side. It's there. Go. So you can see that bolt. And that's a security bit as well. So you can get that toolkit at Harbor Freight, but it's definitely a bit specialty Torx bit. You can see it here. And that goes in and fills the hole. And that is a size. That is a T30, I believe. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here, break this free on this side, on the other side, and then we can pull this airbag out. Okay, now that we got those two out, we can just rock the airbag out of the way. And then we need to work on these terminals to get the airbag out. I'll show you that up close. So what we're going to do here is we're going to pry up on the back lip of this piece. See how that popped up there? And then by doing that, now come under the whole thing and the whole thing pops out. So do that again on the airbag. And of course we've disconnected the battery, so don't have to worry about the airbag blowing up in our face here. Get under there, release that clip so I get the blade under there, and and then just come under it, pop it off. And then we have our airbag out. Now, one thing you may or may not have noticed in this process so far is that this surround doesn't have all the typical cuts and scratches and stuff that you typically see, and that's because I just got rid of all of them last time I took this apart. And what I did is I removed this trim ring, used my fingernail and scraped off all the black, which came off really easily. I used a gunk remover to remove all of the adhesive and sanded it down, just 150 grit. And then, if you can see texture, I sprayed on a hammered paint, so a paint that comes out with a textured look to it. And that gave me the texture I wanted. It actually kind of matches the plastic back here nicely. But then I shot flat black over the top of it, and it really came out nice. It's only been a little while now, and so I don't know about the durability, long term for this. But boy, it feels really good to have this cleaned up. So if you're in this step, I would suggest, when I get this wheel off, I'll show you. But it's really easy to pull this piece out and to clean it up, sand it, paint it, and put it back in while you have this all apart anyway. So just a tip there. Also a decent idea to roll up all your windows if there's any chance of rain. So I'm pulling this all the way out and all the way up. Okay, now we're going to do is take a 19mm socket on an extension. A little shorter than this would be even better. And we're going to remove this master bolt back here. Now what I've done is I've drawn a hash mark and an arrow to the bolt, and that will tell me when I go to put this all back together again, it'll tell me, okay, that I retorqued it back to where it was, that I didn't get the steering wheel off by one tick, and have my alignment mysteriously, I mean, the car will drive straight, but my steering wheel will be crooked. So just do yourself a favor, grab a Sharpie and just mark yourself a line on here with a little arrow saying where everything lines up. But then do is just come in, and I mean, breaking this is, I mean, you expect it to be tough, and it is. I don't really want to just do it against the stops, but there it goes. Okay, so just a nut, it's got a captive washer on there. Now there's a connector in here as well, and you're going to want to release it. So let me get a close-up of that. But there's a little ground, and this connection needs to come off. Okay, so now that that's free, and I'll show you that connection in a minute. Now that this is free, these guys are free. Just rock it back and forth and feed these wires out. There's a little clip down here. Wires are going through. Okay. And the disassembly starts. It starts to look dramatic. So on this piece, this is the button you're pushing on. These little toothy steps right here, which you want to push on. So when it's in there like that, you're pushing towards the center line of the wheel and then pulling this out. So if you want to do that whole painting trick, all you're going to do is take out these two. These are 35 or T35 socket. They're not security bits or anything, but you take those two out. And of course, you didn't have to take the wheel off for this step, but just showing it to you. Take those two out. There's springs back there. This is the moving part for the horn to move in. But take those two out, pull this piece, and then you will take this whole outer plastic piece off. And when you have this off, you can see the bolts that hold it on. And once you have that out, then you can release the bolts that hold this trim ring on. And all the electronics stay with the steering wheel. You're just taking off this trim, which is kind of nice. So with the trim off, then you can work on it. So it's been a week or so, and it's still scratch free at this point. So I've got at least I mean, anything's better than what it was. This whole corner was all chopped up from my fingernail scratching it. So Anyway. Okay, next step, we're going to take off this piece of plastic, which will release this top half as well. This top part is attached to the instrument cluster directly, so this will never actually get completely removed. But these, you can just get a fingernail under there and pry off these little covers. Or, it kills me to see people do this. Don't ever use a screwdriver on anything that you can see that's plastic or leather in a car, because you just leave little marks. Get a tool like this. You can get a whole kit of these for less than 10 bucks. It's a soft plastic, so if anything gets damaged, it's this piece, not your car. So if you're having trouble getting the trim piece off, use something that's designed for it, that's soft and won't end up scratching your interior. So now I just need a Phillips. And down here there's a trim. There's this section right here is a trim piece, and so what we're going to do is bend this. Actually, it can slide back. See, I'm pushing it downward, and it's sliding that piece back, and then okay. So you can see there's clips left and right. So grabbing it and kind of squeezing it up in there and bending it towards itself a bit will help release these clips. Then we can take off this little metal cross bracket here. What I like to do is whenever I take screws out, I like to just put them back where they were. Just so you don't end up with a pile of screws of different sizes or colors and you're kind of lost what they do and where they go. Now, right where my finger is, here there's another hole that's holding on. It's this piece of plastic. So there's 1, 2, and then right there, I can put my finger up inside this hole. And so I'm going to put a screwdriver right there so I can catch it. I just take off that one screw. Yep. Now this should come loose. Let's try. Okay, so this highlights one of the things about this job. Several times you're going to have to go back, reconnect the battery, and do things. I found like when I'm removing the instrument cluster, it was helpful to move my seat all the way forward so I wasn't so awkwardly sitting in the car. Right now, what I didn't do was to take the steering wheel control and move it all the way out. So I need to reconnect the battery for a moment, run this all the way out so I can get my hands around it better. Okay, so now that we have this guy loose, we can to feed him out a little bit. I'm just gonna open him up a bit and slide him out. Now this control is still attached here, so be careful with that. I'm just gonna lean it forward. And the button for this guy is right on top. So you're gonna push down on the button, the fingernail, and then push that direction and in. And that releases this cable. So I'm pushing that little button there. So yeah, that guy. That's out of the way. Now this, like I said, won't ever go anywhere because it's attached by fabric to the instrument cluster itself. So now these are out of the way. We can start working on everything that's down here. So the next few steps are all going to be down here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to take off this panel. Just work your way along. Don't do that. Nice piece of plastic. Okay, that pops off pretty easily. You can see there's a series of clips. We need to release all of this down here. So we're going to take off the hood release control here, this ODB set of connections here and some other bits and pieces. So let me climb in here and start working on that. Okay, let's take off the ODB connector. So 2 screws there. That releases that guy. And again, I like putting the screws right back in. There's nothing worse than getting to the end of a job and having a couple extra screws. Or having one silver one, one black one. And then this is a 10mm socket. It's also a screwdriver bit, but way easier to do this way. Take off this hood release. Okay, so at this point, these 2 screws out, these 2 screws out, we can just grab the bottom of this and pull. And there's clips along the bottom, there's clips up this right side. Look at that. This whole thing starts to open up. Now, just leave it there for a second. We have these connections to deal with. And then this is actually an air intake for temperature sensing the cabin. So it sucks air in and there's a temperature sensor in there. So kind of step 1 here, I'm going to reach around the screwdriver and hit the screw that's kind of facing me right now. It's facing the camera. So it's super awkward, but you get back here with the Phillips and unscrew this guy. And ta-da! Okay, that guy falls loose. Now, take that screw, put it back where it was. Okay. Now looking at this side over here, there's 3 different connections, and these are ones where again you have to push. So this outside gray one, I'm pushing the tab towards me, just pinching. Of course that sounds so simple until you don't have a mechanical advantage to do it. Okay. So I got that gray one loose. The white one I'm pushing down the tab and pulling to get it out. There we go. And then this one, the tab's on the bottom of pain. Actually, it was kind of on the back edge of that thing. There's a little teeny tab right there you have to catch. And it was upside down, so I grabbed that with my fingernail and pulled up. So this whole bottom piece is now released. So we'll put that in the back seat. So now over on this side, there's this trim piece, and this, I believe you just pull out on it, and that piece comes right out. So I found if you have the silver version of this car, and you want to switch it to the phony wood version, or the faux wood, whatever this is, you can buy an entire kit on eBay for a couple $100 of all of the trim pieces all the way around, from the doors to the center console, and just replace all these pieces. So that may be an interesting job to do on sometime. Okay, next step is to take off these 4 bolts, which takes off this big hunk of metal here, which presumably protects your knees in an accident. Now, I've had all this open once before, which is the only reason I know what the steps are. And I took a lot apart that I didn't have to last time. So some of these bolts seem to come off awfully easy for me, and you'll have to, bang them off a little bit harder, but I just realized I have been in here once before. I'm going to put these 2 back in here, which were the hood release. I have a video, if your hood release ever goes completely loose and you can slide it around, I'll put a link up above there you can click on how to get to the spot under the wheel well in the front where this cable goes, and that part can be broken. So if your cable's just sliding around and it's not doing anything, take a look at my video and it'll show you how to do that. Okay, next step is kind of optional. What we need to do is get this bolt off. It's this bolt right here. And that bolt is kind of a pain to get to. Now, if you move this piece out of the way here, it makes it a little bit easier. To do so, you can take a screwdriver and go up and pry inward as you pull down on this thing. And what you'll see is the whole thing will come loose. And you can kind of see in there the hole where the plastic piece was sticking in. So if you can get that out of the way, now we can run a socket a little easier up to that point. By bending this out of the way, we can get to the socket a little bit easier, that hole there. So these are the two we're trying to get to. There's one here and there's one here, which is kind of where this box is kind of in the way. So now that I've gotten that box loose, I can get up underneath this thing and I can get it off. Okay, so here on the other side, I'm trying to get this guy out right there. And then over here is this guy. Now these two, it's really important when you're doing all this work that this whole steering column be as high as it can go, because you can't even get to this one when it's down lower. So that was something I learned the first time I did this. Okay, now if we back up here and look, this whole thing is now loose. Okay, so now that we have all of this loose, literally this whole thing is held on just by the wires in the back. So getting the wires off in the back, that's a lot easier said than done. But what we're going to do is we're going to get those wires free, and then we're going to try and lift it up against the glass, up and over these guys, so we don't have to remove them. That's the step the factory says you have to do, but I found it's a lot of work to get this apart. I found it was easier just to be careful and lift it off. You got to take off the start-stop. Okay, yeah, the button pushes up from the bottom. Release. Get a fingernail under there. There we go. Try pushing in, hitting the tab, and then pulling out. Okay. Now we have the connectors in the back. So this one here, there's a button. Push towards the steering wheel on and pull down. There's that. And this big guy, right in the top center. Right in the top center there is a connection you got to push down on. There it goes. So yeah, putting a tool in there is actually a good idea, because we're trying to release that whole hook right there. So jamming a screwdriver in there was a good idea. Okay, so now that we got those clips free, gotta get this up and over our controls. And to do that, you connect the battery, drop this all the way down, and then we can get it out. And to move that, we need to reconnect this guy temporarily. In fact, I'm just going to pull him out. Can. Just pull the switch out And put him back in. And now we can drop that all the way down. And then slowly get this guy off. Oh, just kind of barely fits. You got all these different things you're hanging up on in the back, but it does eventually come out. Look at that. It looks like devastation without this piece in there. So that's what we got. Guy there. So what I'm going to do now is I think I'm going to take this inside, where the lighting's better, and show you how to get this instrument cluster out of here. Okay, now that we're inside where we can work on this a little bit better, I'm going to flip this over. Gotta be careful because all the things that we're touching with now are things you're going to see once all put back together again, so I'm going to be real careful not to rip or tear or crush or do anything weird. So what we need to do to get the instrument cluster out, we have to get to a series of bolts on this guy. So what I'm going to do first is take off this back trim ring right here. These are all the same size screws, so that's kind of helpful too. So with that off, now we can pry this piece free. Now we can see all the way around the perimeter of the instrument cluster. And well, loosen this guy. Yeah. This is just going to kind of pop free. And then we do have to come in from the front. So what we have is screws here and here that you get to from the front. So slide this out of the way. This one. Same size, and this guy. Now, this got pretty loose there, so we still have something in the back we need to let go of. Yeah, it's looking at it this way. There's a screw here and a screw down here, and this is pretty far down there. The screwdriver's gonna get to it. Yeah, just barely. It's too deep in there. So that one. This one's kind of behind this cable assembly here. Oh, and this guy, slide him. Which way we go here? Just gonna lift nose a bit. So we're just sliding him, I guess that's down, that's the top here. Slide him down to disconnect him. Gently lift out the instrument cluster and drop the screws on the floor. Okay. Okay, so there's a cluster. So if this is as far as you're going, then great. You can see what it took to get this out, and you're gonna put it all back together again. Basically the exact reverse of what we just did. Put this back in, bolt it in, and you're done. Hey guys, jumping in here. So this video, all the content, by the time I took this whole thing apart and put it back together, it ended up being about an hour and 20 minutes. Nobody wants to sit around and watch me do this for that long. So what we're going to do here is we're going to cut. If you were just replacing your instrument cluster, then hey, you're done. You've seen enough. At this point, you've bought another module off eBay or somewhere, and you're just going to go back through and put it all back together again, and that's fantastic. So at this point, you can cut out, watch this video backwards as you put it all back together. So from here, I'm going to put a link to the continuation of this, where I pull the whole design, the whole instrument cluster down to the circuit board level, and desolder and replace all the LEDs, and then we'll just fast forward at that point to put it all back together again and see how bright the cluster came out with upgraded new LEDs. Down here I'll have a link to the reassembly process, like in normal speed, because that's like another half an hour of content at least. As I timed it, it literally took about 1 hour to go from the instrument cluster in my hand, completely dismantled, all the way to the car being put back together again. Maybe it was an hour and 10, but it goes back together fairly quickly if you have all the pieces and you've left all the screws where they belong, and you're just putting it back together again. So anyway, that's the plan, and this is doing it Dan's way, where it's not done perfectly or necessarily the absolute best, but it's just done Dan's way. So if you enjoy it, hit subscribe below, and we'll see you in the next one.